There's something that's been on my mind regarding the account of the woman caught in adultery in John 8. It's an attitude that can be summed up in a meme I saw on Facebook once that said something along the lines of, "The only one who had the right to throw a stone didn't." And it just hasn't sat well with me ever since seeing it. This wasn't a trial. This wasn't legal or justice of any kind. Not Jewish and not Roman. The Mosaic Law required 2 or 3 witnesses. None came forward. Roman law forbade the Judeans from executing anyone themselves for any reason, with good justification from their past dealings with Judean rulers. Herod Archelaus comes to mind. It also takes 2 people for adultery to be committed, and both will be subject to death in a real legal trial under the Torah. Ask yourself, why was the man not brought as well? This wasn't a prostitute either. Jerusalem, like most ancient cities, had its fair share of prostitutes that everyone, including the priesthood and religious leaders, turned a blind eye to, largely because they were being serviced by them. This was a woman who was thrown in front of Jesus as though her life meant nothing, and threatened with death for the sole purpose of entrapping him. Notice that they did so with the assumption that he wouldn't condemn her, and they would be able to accuse him of tearing down the Torah. That should tell you something about what everyone knew, or at least believed, he was teaching publicly right there. No actual witnesses were brought forward. She might have just been pulled off the street at random. Worse, she might have been a teenage girl seduced by one of the Pharisees for the sole purpose of doing away with Jesus. Yes, they and the Sadducees could be that hateful and nasty. We see the same kind of events play out in countries like India, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, where women are raped, treated like trash, and then accused of adultery and executed. First century Judea wasn't much different than Afghanistan or Iran in this respect. If anything, it was Roman law and order which helped to restrain these abuses, if only a little. Even the Romans didn't execute defenseless women in front of temples to their gods by mobs throwing rocks at them. What bothers me most about the little bumper sticker blurb, which got under my skin, is that many churches teach this passage as though executing this woman might have been a right or even just course of action. This blurb assumes that Jesus picking up a rock and stoning her was a real possibility. Anyone who knew or knows Jesus Christ would know that that was never going to happen. I guarantee you this was one of the few times the smile left his lips, and there was cold rage in his eyes for the men who did this to her, and in front of his Father's house. I guarantee you, he did not care if she had been caught in adultery, prostitution, or pole dancing naked in the street. Using this woman so callously and heartlessly was the greater crime, and they had done it not just within his sight, but in full view of his Father's house, without any regard for the true justice of his Father. They might as well have flipped his father the bird right in front of him. The mercy towards the woman was guaranteed the second she appeared. The greater mercy was that the men who did it were allowed to walk away that day. The fig tree which wilted at his word was proof of that. We can't normalize this kind of thinking where moral law is taken as such an absolute that life means nothing. We especially need to not be okay with a woman or anyone being abused or mistreated because someone is twisting said moral law to their advantage. The commandments which Jesus taught and said were the most important were to love one another, be merciful to one another, forgive one another. Not once did he ever teach that it was okay to be violent or hateful towards anyone, regardless of what they did or what moral law they violated. It was the Bible thumpers of that day who murdered him, who saw their moral law as inviolate, except of course when it came to their own machinations. Agreeing with the men hell-bent on bashing this poor woman's head in with rocks in any way is not Jesus, is not Christian, and is the antithesis of what being a disciple of Jesus Christ is all about.